I'm not hearing words anymore. I am being redirected into an entire world of frequency.
Offerings are the antidote to the extractive mind.
So instead of thinking we have to create and we need to take from these places, go pay respect, make some offerings, listen deeply.
How are these cards a mirror, but they're also not a tool to predict the future?
What we have done up until this point is not working, not for anybody. This is an invitation, as a complete destruction of anything on a systemic level that does not honor life.
When you decide to create something from your heart center,
We have to understand that there's so much more here than what the five senses can perceive.
That is my goal. Not happiness, not money, not a relationship, is to trust the current of life.
Blu, Lily, Ashwell, welcome on Just Tap In. I'm holding in my hands a very powerful body of work that has taken years in the process. And before even going into any of that, the storytelling, the creation, I wanted to ask you both right now if we were to pick a card that represents the archetypal story that humanity is going through at this time. What card would it be from the tarot deck?
The Tower. The Tower card is a representation of the complete destruction of anything that is rotten in the foundation of our psyche, of our collective consciousness, of our internal relationship with ourselves, our relationships with others, and anything that is out of integrity. So the Tower card is the card that when you pull it from the deck, you're like, oh, really? And your ego pushes back. You're like, I'm just going to slip that one back in there and pretend that that didn't happen. And yet it is so necessary when we have got ourselves in a position that is really not working anymore and our attachment wants to hold on to it because it's what we know. But we know the systems aren't working and they have to die from the root. And so this is an invitation, as a complete destruction of anything on a systemic level that does not honor life. And that is also, as within, so without. The magician teaches that this is, as Robert Edward Grant would say, the you inverse. And so what we're seeing on a collective level is also happening on an individual level and vice versa. And the Tower card is the card of destruction, but only destruction of anything that is false, that doesn't honor all of life. And so it's not a destruction from a bad perspective. It's a destruction of anything that is false. So ultimately, we want to move in that direction when we can get past the attachment of the things that we have identified with that are actually not real, to let it die so that a new way of being can be born. And I think we would both agree on the Tower being there.
Yeah, I would agree that the Tower is the moment. And a lot of people don't know that astrology and the tarot are two systems that really speak to each other. And so every card in the tarot can have an astrological connection. And the Tower is connected to the planet Mars, which is the energetics of the ego and of our assertion and our will and our drive. And so, of course, we need an ego to exist in this dimension. But when in harmony, the ego is in service to spirit, and that's what it's creating for and from. And in shadow, the ego becomes self-serving and it becomes lost in the Maya, and it forgets that this reality is rooted in spiritual truth, and it can become materialistic and so it's those stories of the ego that aren't true that are crumbling both collectively and personally right now.
And I told Blu when we booked this day, I was like, we're going to be recording this on one of the most charged astrological months of this year. And taking advantage that we have here, the master astrologer herself, and as Blu refers to you, the best kept secret of Topanga. Why is this period, and maybe you can both weave into it, around the astrology behind, like the backdrop of the stars and how that's influencing this time that we're in?
Yeah, well, this month specifically, it's the second week of July that's very charged, and I believe it's July 17th.
My birthday.
Your birthday?
Yeah.
Your higher self knew. You were like, I'm going into that
Right
dimension and I'm slipping right in an auspicious way. Or was it auspicious because you came here? Who knows? Keep going.
So Uranus and Pluto are two slow-moving planets. It takes Uranus 84 years to move through the full zodiac, and it takes Pluto 248 years to cycle through. And so when those two planets that have their own unique orbits come together in what we call a conjunction, where they're side by side, that's a rare experience. And that conjunction happened in the 60s. It happened in 1965. And we don't need to know about astrology or even much about history to know that the 60s was a revolutionary time for humanity. And you can think about the 50s as being this kind of what we would now call almost repressed or traditional period. And the 60s was big for civil rights and women's rights and people just kind of opening their mind to new ways of being and seeing. And so when planets conjunct like that, it's a seed point. And so there was a seeding that happened with Pluto and Uranus in the 60s. And when there are certain geometrical relationships that happen years later, it's almost like a check-in for the intention of that energy. And so on July 17th, Pluto and Uranus are going to be in what we call a perfect trine. So it's a checkpoint for that revolutionary spirit that was activated then. And Pluto is similar to the energy of how we were describing the tower, which is about revealing what is rotten at the root, and it's in service of truth ultimately, but through destruction and transformation and revealing what isn't in service of truth. And Uranus is a energy about revolution, also in service to truth and freedom and liberating whatever it is that's holding us back from expressing that truth. And it's also very associated with the higher mind and the collective consciousness. And so, every astrologer and every kind of philosophical thinker is going to have their own spin on why this is so important. But for me, I'm most interested in are kind of the limiting beliefs of the mind and the stories of the mind. And, I would love to hear what your ideas are around this, Blu, but with the tarot, one of our biggest inspirations is to let people use it as a tool to trust whatever is most difficult within themselves, within their lives, and to use it as a framework to come into deeper presence with now, and ultimately to trust in the medicine of the moment and to adopt an empowered mindset and to liberate ourselves from victim consciousness. And so I see that on a collective scale is to reclaim empowered thinking. And what does that really mean? And I think that means coming into deeper presence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really like what you mentioned about how the tarot is not used to predict the future. There's a quote that we have in the deck. You want to say it?
The task is not to predict the future, but to be present enough to meet it.
And I think that we can get so caught in a binary operating system of being like, this isn't how my life is supposed to look. This isn't what's supposed to be happening. I'm not supposed to have this rift with this person. This isn't supposed to be how my life is meant to go. And so we are literally fighting with reality. And a dear friend of mine would say that the most sacred thing is what is. And so the invitation with this technology is to be able to meet what is with an open palm without white gripping what we think our life is supposed to look like, and to be in service to finding the center of the constant moving wheel, which is the Wheel of Fortune, which is the front cover of the tarot, which is realizing that life is constantly in motion. With falling in love, there is also heartbreak. With the day, there is also the night. Is the night a bad thing? Or is it really just the opposite so that the day can even exist? Because it has to have the opposite for the energy to bounce off and to create it into form. And so the invitation here is to transcend this binary operating system that says there is a right way of my life going and there's a wrong way of my life going. And if I feel angry, then something's gone horribly wrong. Or everything in life is subjective to the story you place on it. And if you shift the narrative into an empowered place of being curious, what is this here to teach me? Then the only thing that's going to happen is you're either going to grow or you're going to evolve, which is basically the same thing. So the mindset of coming into this reality and realizing that you're going to experience grief, you're going to experience heartbreak, you're going to experience confusion and jealousy and uncertainty and unworthiness and joy and creativity and bliss and oneness. It's the human experience, HUE, every color of the rainbow. So the cards are an invitation to reflect and mirror what is already alive and to create a sense of direction that actually trusts in the process as opposed to projecting onto the situation blame, which disempowers, which creates us to keep staying in the same cycle until we learn the lesson and evolve through it.
Mm. And I know you both have gone really deep into the study of divination. And I was hearing a story where Blu was debating on whether to keep a house in Topanga, and you pulled a card that was an old man in the Palisades. And you pulled a card that was an old man that had the same dreadlocks as you at the time, and it said, hold the space. And so I'm going here questioning, like, how are these cards, and you were just mentioning how they're a mirror, but they're also not a tool to predict the future. And so when we really tune into this art form of divination that has been around for centuries, what have you both tuned into that technology that you'd like to share with the world right now?
I think that, I mean, I love you as a podcast host because you really do your research. You really do dig and you show up here super prepared, grounded, clear, and aligned. So amazing. Thank you for digging into that piece. And yeah, it was a moment where I was at a choice point in my life, and I was living in my dream of a home, but I was with my business partner at the time, and she ended up falling in love and wanting to leave the space within a very short period of time, which meant that I was being initiated to then carry the weight of the rent of this place, which was tremendous compared to what I had in my bank account, which was not very much. And I was like, am I being asked to lean into my dream life, but my logistical 3D reality does not reflect that making any sense? Or do I step away and recognize that it's not the time for me? And I could not make a decision. I was going back and forth and back and forth. And somebody left this oracle deck sitting on the table at the house, and I was like, oh, I've never seen these before. All right, I'm complete with being indecisive. I'm just going to sit with this deck. I'm going to pull a card, and whatever the card is going to be my decision. And I sat and I really just poured my energy into this, and I pulled a card. And it was a druid, and I'm British. We're both British by blood, and the druids and the pagans are super fascinating to us, and we can go into that later. But there's something really, I feel very connected to the druids. And at the time, my hair was made of butterfly silk, and it was like handmade, spirit locks that were called. And inspired by the druids. And so when I pulled this card, and it was this man with white locks, and it just said, hold the space, it just hit me in my stomach, but it didn't give me something that wasn't already there. It affirmed what I deeply knew beyond the fear. And it pulled it out of me. And so that's what we're talking about, is saying it's not about predicting. It's not saying this is what you should do. It's about what I already knew, but it was so globbed in fear. The fear of running out of money, the fear of not having enough resources. And I know what's going to happen. I'm going to end up on the street. And then what's going to happen? Then I'm going to just be a bum of society. Whatever it is, right? The story just keeps going. But it pierced into the part of me that already knew. And so it pulled it out of me. And that is being as present as I possibly could to the feeling that was already alive. And so, yes, I made a massive life decision based off of a card, but my gut already knew. And that's what we put emphasis on, is that the power is not in the deck. It's in you. You are a multifaceted, multidimensional human of infinite capabilities. You have been given this quantum computer that is the most advanced technology that we have ever experienced on this planet. No man could ever create what we are operating in on a daily basis. And the only reason that we have created this is to create a mirror for you to remember that, so that you can start to actually plug into this reality that we've all chosen to show up at the exact same time. All of us are kind of scratching our head being like, what is really going on here? I think we are only just operating from a very limited perspective of the grand vastness of the mysteries of being alive. Can we have a technology that allows us to meet the depth and the richness that we already have inside of ourselves, so that we can remember and then do this together? And that's our intention with creating this, is merely just a remembrance of your magnificence that is reflected back to you through the mirror technology. But to not place this as God or as the answer, because this is where we get lost again, because we keep placing outside of ourselves, thinking that that's the way, diffusing our purpose, our power, and our ability to make decisions based off of actually getting quiet and recognizing all of the answers are within.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There are many challenging cards in the tarot, and a lot of people are nervous sometimes to even work with the system of the tarot because of the difficult cards it can present. And we've spent a lot of time loving these darker or supposedly darker energies within the deck, and understanding how to alchemize them into the light, and learning how to trust the medicine that they hold. And ultimately the intelligence of life is always working to return us and itself to the light. And every archetype within the tarot deck is alive in us and is woven into every human story. And so we feel really passionate about helping people reclaim these so-called difficult or wrong experiences, and understanding through creating context and revealing the path to alchemy that they ultimately serve a purpose. And so, you know, the major arcana are the first 22 cards of the deck, and it really maps the story of the hero's journey, which is the journey that we all have to go on to lose ourselves, to find ourselves, and discover what it is that we're capable and what it is that we're made of. And that journey from card 0 to 21 is how they're numbered. So 22 cards total is, you know, there are high highs and there are low lows. And the final card of that journey is, I think it's probably my favorite card. It's the universe. And that card is, we can relate it to the fully blossomed rose, whereas the first card, the Fool, is the seed of that rose. And so the intelligence of that blossoming existed at the very beginning of that journey. The code was written at the Fool, card 0, and all the tower, the challenging moments, the moon, you know, the journey through the darkness and the fear of the subconscious mind, that was all a part of the code to arrive at that rose with the universe. And so that final card is, it's a homecoming, it's the end of a sacred cycle, and you know, it's a feeling of fulfillment and learning the lesson. And we also realize through the journey of the major arcana that this game of life is not about material actualization. It's about these internal activations that unfold in our process of achieving external things. And so we then dissolve back into the cycle and become the Fool again. At the end, there is no end to this process. And again, the astrological connection to the universe is Saturn, which is a planet that also a lot of people can kind of struggle with, because it's about challenge and effort and sometimes struggle and restriction. But like all challenging energies in this dimension, it's it's in service to our higher self. It's in service to integrity and anchoring the highest version of our being into physical form. And so with the universe, we get to enjoy the highest expression of Saturn, where we've been through hardship and we've been through struggle, but we've now arrived at this blossomed rose where it all makes sense and there's context for everything that we went through.
I'm literally feeling on my left hand just like this burning sensation as I'm holding this really powerful body of work, as I was mentioning. And I know that everything that's created that's of meaning behind it was a lot of devotion and a lot of intention, a lot of highs and lows, as you were saying. And so I know that this journey did not only take place in an art studio in Topanga. I know it started in Glastonbury. I know it went into the Amazon rainforest jungle. It went into Egypt, back to Egypt, which is where I first met Blu. So I'm curious to know why you both felt called to leave the comfort of your home, to go look for answers in sacred spots around the world. And how did that then influence into the work that then came through in this baby that you're ready to birth into the world?
We're in the phase right now of telling the story. And yesterday I was so deep in the archives of all of the photos. I'm the one in this partnership, creative partnership, by the way. So many people think we're married, by the way. You know, right? I got so many messages being like, "Oh, I thought you were gay." And I was like, we are for a creative baby, aren't we, babe? So I was going through the archive, and I'm the one in this creative partnership where I take all the photos. I like to document everything. I like to be able to go back on like a little time capsule and to relive the energy of what was created. And yesterday I was up until 2:00 in the morning because I couldn't tear myself away from actually, for the first time, going back through the camera roll of what we just did. And it was allowing me to actually receive what we just did, because I think when you're so close to the project, it's quite easy to oversee what the heck just happened to our lives when we said yes to this. And it wasn't a conscious decision like, okay, we're going to start this project and then we're going to go to Glastonbury and then we're going to go to Egypt and then we're going to go back to Glastonbury and then we're going to go to do a 10-day dieta in the Amazon jungle without any electricity. And then we're going to go back to Topanga and we're going to stitch everything together. We were invited into these pockets through life's interesting openings that just made sense. It was the choiceless choice. It was like, okay, now we're doing this. And the river would kind of turn and meander, and then we would be like, this is the path of least resistance. But we said yes to this project, and then our entire life opened up and it went, all right, if you want to create something that's actually got very deep roots, that this is what it really requires. We thought we were just going to be working on this project for 1 year. That's what we had carved out. It turned out to be 3 years. Because the depth that was required to honor this technology is not something that people just dip their toe in the water and within 3 weeks you've got something because you put a bunch of code words into ChatGPT and then you've been able to create a tarot deck. We had to be initiated into every single archetype for us to have a deep level of empathy to be connected to what it is that we're writing. Because if we've not lived the experience or gone through it or have somebody very close to us go through that rite of passage, we actually don't know what we're talking about. And nothing, no wisdom, no teaching ever lands unless it's embodied. And so for us to actually birth something that was authentic, that was embodied, and that was honest, we had to go through every single initiation of the cards, which is why it took us 3 years. And so we were invited, to go on these trips. And at the time we were just like, okay, this is what life is asking of us. But we had no idea because all we could see was what was happening in the moment. And it wasn't until for me last night at 2:00 in the morning, or I guess technically this morning, was I like, oh my gosh, what happened in each place, whether it was a Glastonbury tour, the fact that Richard Rudd showed up and we literally sat in a cottage in the middle of the countryside in England and he prayed over the whole creation. It was right before we made the first piece of art. And we had a blessing over, he's like my spiritual dad, him and I are like fam for life. And he showed up during that time. And at the moment, I was like, oh, Richard's in town. Of course, he lives here. This makes sense. But when looking back on it, we were guided by so many divine synchronicities that happen. And every single place we recognize that, and we learned it over the time, that the invitation is not to just go make art. It's to submerge ourselves so deeply in an environment that art just inevitably pours out of you. And to recognize that we are not there to project our mentality onto what we think it's supposed to look like, but to align our beings into a deep level of coherence that something greater starts moving through us. And so our responsibility wasn't to go make art. Our responsibility was to fine-tune our instrument so that what came through us blew our own minds in the process. And so when we would go to the Glastonbury White Springs and we would bathe in these waters in the middle of winter, and people were singing, and there was druid altars, and there was candles lit, and we were underground where the masculine and the feminine lines on the planet meet each other right in that spot while we're in these waters in our ancestry lands. And just some divine inspiration, something comes through, and all of a sudden we go back to the studio, and then this light language starts pouring out of my hand. And I'm like, what is going on? And she's like, that, more of that. And I'm like, okay, blah, blah, blah. And it's now literally laced all over the deck. So in every single place we went to, all our job was to go to these sacred sites and listen and to pay respect and to bring our little offering bundles with us everywhere we went, and to not extract, but to listen and offer. And our teacher taught us, Isis Andrea, she taught us that the antidote to the extractive mind is offerings. So instead of thinking we have to create and we need to take from these places, go pay respect, make some offerings, listen deeply. And then when we would go back to the studio, we were like, what is coming out of us? And we would be squealing to each other because we didn't know that we were capable of creating this. But that is us realizing that we surrender my will for thy will, and to recognize every single person on this planet is a vessel for something greater to move through. And that's why we needed a physical body, because when we were spirit and we're all oneness and we're energy, we don't have a physical body to actually birth things through. And so when we can remember that and become like less distracted and less kind of just fogged over and just doing the same things and just glued to our cell phones, but to actually go into nature and listen beyond our ears so that we could allow something to move through us to remind us the gift of being human, the gift of being alive, the gift of what has been left by the greats before us, these breadcrumbs everywhere. And it's the most magical treasure hunt for us to witness the truest beauty of becoming a vessel for something greater to move through.
Mm-hmm.
When we began this project, I was just coming out of several years of a deep healing portal with Lyme disease in my body, which became a very spiritual time for me, where I really went into my studies and my art and my creation, and it was a cocoon. And I felt very connected to my center and very pure and connected to spirit. And I was living in a cocoon. And I've made a deck previously about astrology, and that project was created and born from that place of healing. And I knew I wanted to bridge the heavenly and the bodies. And there's something that can happen when we begin our healing journeys or our spiritual explorations, where there's almost a spiritual bypass that can start to happen, where we feel like resistant maybe to this imperfect human experience, whether that's the imperfection of our bodies or our lives or the mundane tasks that feel so empty of spirit, or things that feel ugly and wrong. And it's so important to remember that somehow spirit is everywhere, and it's woven into all of these things that feel so void and empty of it. And partnering with Blu, who's so in love with life and so full of vitality and energy, and which, if I'm honest, isn't, and I don't mean this in a depressive way, but I have no problem isolating myself in my studio and immersing myself in study and making art and just leaning into my student and my teacher. And we spoke about rising signs before we began this podcast, and I'm sitting in a room of Sag rising people who have that fire and that need to adventure. And I'm a Virgo rising, which is a very different energy. It's earth, and it's meticulous, and it's systems oriented. And in the tarot, Virgo is the hermit. And I don't know loneliness or boredom even. Like there are worlds that open to me on my own in my studio. And I, in my connection to spirit, I arrived at a place of just reverence for the mystery of life and for this dimension. And long-winded way of saying, I wanted to bring someone in to go on a journey with. I knew I'd wanted to do it in collaboration. So that's how Blu and I came together, and the adventure unfolded. And so it, these places that we traveled to, and these cultures that devoted their lives to being pillars that anchor spirit into form, going to Egypt and seeing these temples that are so intricate and so complex. And you realize that all day, every day, these people were just praying and anchoring their connection to something greater into this dimension. It helped me kind of land back here after many years of kind of floating in the ethers.
I Sag risings all over her. I was like, we're going.
Yeah.
We're going to pioneer new lands. We're going to go on adventures.
Yeah.
And you trusted it. And it's like wild to see the way that you evolved and molded and came alive and met new people and utilized this really long healing cocoon and gathered enough energy to then pioneer out into the world and to be able to meet you in such mystical, sacred spaces around the world and continue to collaborate. So special.
And Lily was mentioning how you come to a realization where spirit is everywhere. And just as you were saying that you decided to co-partner on this creative project together, obviously there's an army and a legion. I think, I don't like the word army too much, but the legion of unseen forces that are around you when you decide to create something from your heart center. And there was a moment in the art studio when a flash of light came in through the window. And that moment was something that changed a lot of the next process, the next phase of what this became to be. So I'm curious what that moment represented or was from a spiritual perspective.
So being the one that's got the Leo moon, let's time lapse every studio session for multiple reasons. One, because my cell phone is my biggest distraction. And so to stay focused on the project and to not be checking my phone or whenever it lights up, notification. I wanted to time lapse every studio session. And for the second reason is because I wanted people to go on the journey with us of what it actually took behind the scenes. Because there's one thing to disappear, go into creative cocoon, come out with something like that, share it with the world and let it be done. But people hold it and they're like, wow, this is magical, but don't really understand what it took to create a body of work like that. So I wanted to show people, what does 2.5 years look like in a studio through time lapses? And every day we had a routine. The time-lapse arm thing was like on the clasped on the wall, and I'd plug my phone in and I'd be like, right, we're time-lapsing. And we didn't mind because it was the back of our heads. So it didn't matter what we were wearing or like whatever. We completely forgot about it being in time-lapsing. It wasn't like we felt like we were performing or anything. We just got to work. And every session at the end of the day, I'd take the time-lapse off and I'd upload it and I put it on my highlight reel so that it stayed forever and be like, okay, we're on this journey. And at day 265, day 672, and it would just go all the way through of our creation. And every day at the end, I'd watch the time lapse back. We'd both watch it, and then we're like, "This is cute." I'd tag her, upload it, move on to the next day. And there was a day that we did the time lapse. We watched it back, and there's a circled window above us where we worked in the studio, which is in the back of Lily's house. And that day, there's something significantly different about the time lapse, where it wasn't just the sun had moved across the sky and beamed through the window for a second and then disappeared. It was like there was, I'm going to find that time lapse and rewatch it. There was a light that came through that window that stayed and went like a Morse code, and then went like this and created waves, like a frequency that was like a gift into the space that filled up the space. We didn't even notice it. And it was like this flash, and then it disappeared. And I was like, that feels like an angelic presence to me. There's something benevolently beautiful about that. And we were kind of taken aback, and I shared this on my story. And then Lily's mother, who has been our number one fan throughout this journey, she sent us a message. She goes, "You do realize that it's your grandmother's birthday today." And through a series of wild experiences, her grandmother, who has passed, has been a massive guide through us throughout this project, and actually part of the reason why we even came back together, met each other from the other side. And maybe you could share a little bit more about that. But she's a significant role player as an ancestor into this space, and is a huge part of the matriarchal line of the creative gift that runs through the Ashwell lineage. And Lily created her astrology deck solely with her grandmother's paintbrush. And we did a psychic reading. You know Tony? You know Tony the psychic?
No.
Okay.
No.
She's gone through the crew. She's wild. And we did a psychic reading with her once, and she was like, "Oh, you and Blu, you're together because of your grandmother. She orchestrated that for you guys to come together and create this project and support Lily with the next evolution of her health, and support me with actually anchoring and all of this energy into something real and tangible that can be a legacy project." And so when we realized that it was her grandmother's birthday that day, when that angelic presence beamed into the studio, we knew that we were working also with some really angelic beauty that was also guiding this project.
Mm-hmm. What does 108 mean to you guys?
What was the question?
What does 108 mean to us?
108?
Yeah.
108.
Apparently it's a very sacred number, and it's
You just
108 right
checked it,
now. And so I was like, whoa.
I mean, I've been looking into that. I don't know. But the fact that we're talking about this right now in that moment, and this is the thing that's been happening throughout this entire deck, is that we genuinely have felt another worldly presence of beauty and love and support that has guided us in ways that none of it really makes logical sense, but has left us just with our jaw on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, for me, an honor to hold this gift in my hand, but also ask if you could both pull the first card from this deck. And whatever card that comes through with is our next topic in the conversation.
Okay.
Amazing. I love this.
So I'd love to give it over to you guys.
Okay. So also just to go back to a previous question about how has our travel influenced the artwork. This is the light language that was pouring through, started in Glastonbury, but has continued. Even I was in the shower the other day, you know, when the steam creates in the shower, my arm just starts moving. And it's literally like a code information through my hand. And I'm just like, can't stop, won't stop. It's just all over the house. And Lily was like, just go, let it rip. Full permission. And so I made pages on pages of this light language. And then while she was stitching the packaging together from all of the years of our work, It's made it onto the outside of the box. It's on the entrance and at the exit of the book. So it's sandwiched. This is from our time in Egypt, the Ankh, going to the Temple of Isis. It's all over the walls, the hieroglyphs, understanding the history of it, creating her own version of it. Lily, it was done in black, and then Lily inverted the color into white and then hand painted the background of the watercolors. And then I did these little doodles and she stitches it all together. So that just goes to, emphasize all of our travels are just so woven into this creation. And let's pull a card to the direction of this conversation, Lily. There you go.
Let's do it.
With the light language, I know that started for you. And that was already happening when we met in Egypt.
Yeah.
And so now that it's been a few years from then, what does that light language mean to you?
So a fun little fact, if people don't know about this about me, I am deaf, legally deaf. So I can have this conversation with the headphones. But when I walked into the studio, I don't know what anyone's saying. Like, it's completely silent. If I was to close my eyes, I wouldn't know anybody was speaking. So I'm reading lips the entire time. That's why I go quite quiet at the beginning of the conversation, because I'm like, hey everyone. The second we sit down, I put the headphones on, directional mic goes directly into my ears, and so I can actually hear and have a conversation, which I think is quite funny. I think God's like, all right, less small talk and more podcasts. Okay, great. So with that being said, I don't hear words like I used to. I had my hearing for 35 years. So I've only been deaf for 7 months. So this is a huge part of the initiation that I have been on since we started this deck. And because I'm not hearing words anymore, I'm being redirected into an entire world of frequency. And every single thought, word, and deed, every single thing that we've ever done and how we've responded to it in our life sits in our energetic field. So as humans, we have trained to communicate just with our words. And this also can get very lost. We say words that we think people will like us, or we say kind of half-truths, or we say things that can be misunderstood, because language is really just subjective to what you know of it. And so then you process it through your mind, and you might hear something completely different to what that person's saying, because you meet the world as you are, not as what they are saying. Mm. So there is a lot of confusion, a lot of issues that come up with just lost in translation. Where if we were just silent and we felt the energy of the person, we would get a lot more information. But we have been so dependent on our five senses that our extrasensory perception has not been taught or trained, or our ability to have telepathy or nonverbal communication and body language, how our emotions are processing, and they have like a chemical state that sends off an energetic field that then you can pick up through your stomach and process it through your being, which is also known as empathy. And so for me, when I'm no longer being able to hear words with anybody, I don't really hang out with people anymore, because it's just really quite challenging for me to be in a room with people that I love and feel so disconnected and so far away. And so in this solitude of this project, the light language for me is a representation of the energetic signature beyond the words. And so the language that was coming through, first and foremost, the state I was in when creating it was like a meditative, timeless, the only thing that exists is right now while it's moving through my hand. And I just get to receive the gift of the meditation state that I'm in while my hand is moving beyond my mind and through my heart. Mm. And she would say, okay, this card, because we did light language on all of the major arcanas. And so she would pull the card, or she would say the name of the card and then say, okay, create the language for the light language for that one. So I would just feel into the energetics, take a few deep breaths, close my eyes, really connect in with my heart, and then go. And it would go. The crazy thing about the light language, I never made a mistake. I didn't go, oh, that doesn't look good, and scratch it out. There was never a single line that was out of place. It just knew what it was doing. And it would go to the energetics beyond the words of it, so that when you look at it, it's not supposed to say anything. It's supposed to carry a code of feeling, so that there's a remembrance that happens inside of you of some kind of mystery and multidimensional experience that lives inside of you. And so I don't necessarily need to label where it comes from, but more so, what is the feeling it evokes first and foremost within me while creating it? Which is peace, trust, timelessness, presence, creativity, blowing my own mind. Great. Then that's the energy that's infused into it. So everybody can look at it and have a different experience of it and see what it activates within you. But it's not necessarily meant to say, okay, and now I'm creating on a deck and it says these words and this is what I am and this is my English and I hope you enjoy my book. It's more of like a
transmission.
And so this is the world that I'm living in right now as a deaf woman, as a 35-year-old deaf woman, that I am living in a realm of frequency and coherence and resonance as opposed to words.
Thank you.
Just as you were speaking, I was realizing the perfection of our new launch date. You know, this deck is about 3 weeks late. And by the time
Lily was also 2 weeks late when her mother was giving birth to her because she was like, I ain't coming out yet, yo.
He's like, no.
Yeah, no, I'm good in here. You know,
again.
it's kind of crazy out there.
Yeah, but it will be, by the time this podcast is released, it'll be out in the world. But it's going to be launching on July 13th, which is the day of a Mercury Cazimi, which for people who don't know, it's when Mercury is conjunct the sun. And so Mercury, the mind, illuminated, and also communication and just kind of our understanding of reality, you know, like just there's a spotlight shining on that. And then a few days later is this conjunction of Pluto and Uranus that we just spoke about. And I think one of the things that's being illuminated or revealed or reworked is this idea that there's this one fixed reality that is perceived through the five senses and how limiting that construct is for humanity, and to recognize that we're living in this multidimensional reality where as Blu is being forced into this space of operating through her hearing. And in some ways she's, I think it was Zach Bush said a quote once about Blu that she's kind of just jumped into the pond ahead of the rest of us.
Yeah.
And
the future human.
Future human. And so everything that she just shared is very relevant to collectively what we're being asked to consider and eventually step into with this relationship with Pluto and Uranus right now. And how many problems, how much suffering is on this planet is rooted in a feeling of fear and lack, and like there isn't enough, and this extractive mind that we are in resistance to. We're wanting to reprogram that extractive way of thinking to remembering that offerings are the antidote to the extractive mind. And in order to operate that way, we have to understand that there's so much more here than what the five senses can perceive, and that there is this living consciousness woven into everything in life and the planet. And this deck that we've made is our attempt at offering a framework and a guide for people as they begin to open their minds to this way of operating.
After we pick a card, I'd love to also explore, because we've all seen how certain extraterrestrial beings are depicted. The proverbial beings that have blue skin, and I know you've connected with them here and there. So have I in certain journeys, but a lot of the ones I've seen don't have ears. And it's almost like when we talk about evolution and the future human, where we're headed, we might even have to lose certain senses in order to gain better ones.
Totally.
And so we'll explore that.
Well, so just an example of this deck is listening and responding, and it has its own consciousness, and it's here in this conversation. And so the card that I pulled is the 10 of Discs. which astrologically is Mercury in Virgo. And the keywords here are abundance through alignment, giving as receiving, wealth and legacy. But it's this idea that the energy is Virgo. And so through our integrity and through our coherence and our being in right relationship with ourselves and with spirit and with the earth, that we are provided for. And so it's a card of abundance, and it's a card of all of the things that we strive to achieve and accumulate in our lives, but that abundance is born from being in right relation. And
while you're speaking, I'm just thinking about, we go on social media and it's like, oh yeah, look at my flex. I got this new car. Oh, look at my flex. I'm standing with this celebrity. Oh, look at my flex. I got this really swanky house. Oh, look at my flex. I got these new clothes. That is so boring now. Like, we've got to be honest. And that sounds judgmental. It's slightly judgmental, but judgment and discernment sit on the same frequency bandwidth. And to be like, the new wealthy abundance is to be an aligned, regulated, self-aware, full responsibility human. That is what it means to truly be abundant, is to create a level of alignment with our life. And something that it makes me think about is how I'm like, I'm a good person. I'm nice to people. I'm nice to the person that opened the door for me, or I'm nice to the waiter, and I'm nice to the person at the parking lot. Yes, and how do you show up in your most immediate relationships? Are you age regressing to your 8-year-old self and projecting shame onto the other person because they've triggered an unintegrated part of yourself and then turned into that version of you and now caused more harm in that situation because you don't have a level of self-awareness around your internal wounding? Because if that is happening, then the rest of those kind of sweet, short interactions are really just maintaining your image. Because if we are not in right relation with the people that see the deepest, most unintegrated versions of ourselves, and we take responsibility in those places, then the rest of it isn't actually fully aligned. Yes, it is important to be kind to people, 100%. That is a byproduct of us genuinely learning how to be kind to ourselves when we're going through really challenging emotions or when we're grieving, to not fully reject ourselves and glob more shame and more guilt on something that we have deemed as unlovable, but to actually have the courage to sit in the depth of the discomfort and ask myself, am I willing to love these parts of myself too? Because if I can say yes to those moments, you become more beautiful. All of a sudden, I can see your gifts now. I can see how amazing you are. Why? Because I've been able to do it for myself, and that is the capacity I can give to you. So it's not just me preserving my identity or my character with small little interactions where you're not going to see the deepest parts of me. You're never going to get that 8-year-old version of me having a tantrum and being mad at you. She is. She's going to get that version of me that has not received love in those moments when I was a child, and I now feel backed into a corner and it comes out of me like sideways. Because she spent 3 years sitting by my side. My fiance is going to get that version of me because he's chosen to do life with me and to build a life with me. So we're going to go into the depth of our psyche. And so when I see things of like people blasting that they've got all this money, I'm not interested. It's not exciting to me whatsoever. Show me how developed your frontal lobe is. Let me feel safety in your presence, because you've allowed yourself to be safe for your own deepest emotion. Because if I'm sitting in the room with somebody else that has the courage to put their eyes inwards, my nervous system starts to re-regulate. What a gift that is. So why don't we create a new story around what success is? Because right now, the collective consciousness is a story that is being fed that the more external material objects you accumulate, the more successful you are, which is feeding the extractive mind, which is one of the biggest issues on this planet. We're just extracting from everyone and everything. What can you give to me? Or we could flip the script and create genuine abundance, which is what can I offer to the space? Giving as receiving. It's the same frequency. But when we are locked in the mindset that my worth comes from something outside of myself, I'm constantly seeking to extract to fill something that can never be filled. And it's called the epidemic of the hungry ghost. Cue Amazon Prime. I got to keep ordering stuff. Oh, come on, get it. I want to get all the stuff immediately because then I feel it's high and this hit that I got these new shoes and then I'm prancing around in these new shoes and then all of a sudden the high dips again. And I got to go for the next high. And now I'm going to find it in this person. So I'm going to go on the app and I'm going to swipe right based off of what you look like. And then I'm going to go on a date with you and I'm going to see what I can get from you to fulfill that feeling that I'm not fulfilling within myself. And then it gets boring. And then you move on to the next thing. And this is how the extractive mind works. And so the new wealthy is somebody that has carved out so much depth within themselves, transcended beyond a binary operating system that says there's a right and a wrong way of being human, and just remain curious to whatever is most alive, to sit with it long enough to not grab our phone to self-soothe, but to actually feel the discomfort and allow it to carve out a depth in our soul that the next moment that passes, then all of a sudden joy for nothing appears because of your willingness to sit in the fire and die well. So then all of a sudden you're having your morning cup of coffee and a hummingbird just shows its way into your immediate field. And you can see it just hovering there just for a moment long enough for you to receive the message of spirit that everything is right on time. And that is not loud. And it doesn't need to tell everybody online. It is just a moment where you're in a private cosmic joke with God and existence itself, where you remember everything is part of this. And all of this is a reflection for me, the deeper part of myself. And anything that's triggering me is just an opportunity for an area where there is not self-awareness to be infused with some love. And I don't just do this. We don't just do this. We don't just do this for ourselves. We do this so that when the next generation is born through us, through women who are the Stargate Enterprise from one dimension to the next, who become free-thinking women, who become self-aware women, give birth to self-aware, free-thinking children. And what happens when you have a free-thinking child? You cannot control it. So all the systems, the food, the education, the media, all of the ways that try and put us in a box is no longer possible for the next generation. And this is what we're about to see, I believe. And this is why it is the work of our time, of our lifetime, is to encourage people to have a deeper level of self-awareness, ultimately a deeper level of self-responsibility, to stop causing as much harm and as extractive energy on this planet as possible, and to leave every space more beautiful than we found it. And if that is only your purpose, job well done. If that's it, the only thing is to say one genuine thank you in the morning for your life. And to leave every space more beautiful than you found it with your conscious awareness. And to forgive yourself when you didn't know better at the time of the moment. And to clean up everything that you can with a level of self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others. Then your life has been a massive benefit to the collective mind. And we say thank you every single day for you being alive. Because your gift may not be loud, but it is so felt. And not just for this lifetime, but for our children and our children's children, and 7 generations back are cheering, and 7 generations forward are saying thank you for just being alive. So the invitation of this card is to remember that abundance is through alignment, not through material possession. And giving and receiving is the same frequency. And this is what creates true wealth in your life. And that's also what leaves your legacy.
That doesn't light a fire, I don't know what will. And I had a question for Lily. When you get that version of Blue, right, the 8-year-old version, the wounded version, what wisdom from your higher self tends to come through for her in those moments when she's having a hard time?
I don't know why this dimension is this way, but this place, this earthly experience that we're having is inherently imperfect, and there is a version of us that we can call our high self, where we are in our wholeness and we are complete and we are perfect. And similar to the hero's journey in the tarot, that perfect version of us always exists. And for some reason, the game here on Earth is that we come here with wounding, some of it inherited, some of it accumulated along the way. And our work is to trust these wounds and get curious about them, and to resist the urge to silence them or to become reactive around them. And when we're in relationship with people that we feel triggered by, and instead of leaning into that reactivity, to get curious about what is coming up for us, and recognizing that everyone and everything that we're in relationship with is a mirror and is reflecting back to us these parts of ourselves where we've lost this sense of wholeness. And so I trust Blue's integrity, and I trust her devotion to that high self, that higher version of herself. And so when she age regresses, and for her, she that can express as being kind of reactive, or maybe a little fiery, and
not maybe. Just a little fiery.
Pretty fiery.
It's the rising side.
I have a dragon.
I didn't know how much intel we wanted to give everyone. She can be mean. And I know she is in her wound, and I also know she is already in the process of taking responsibility for that reactivity. And so it's my honor to be the mirror that's allowing her to contact these parts of her that are wanting to come back into wholeness. And the same is true for me. I'm not, my wounding doesn't usually express as fiery or reactive. I can get cold and distant and rigid, and I want to be free too. I want to align with my high self, and so Blue offers me that same mirror and patience.
It's special because not everyone can bring those parts of us out to be seen and to be observed and witnessed. So, I think I can count on one hand how many people that side of me, the darker aspects, the crunchier aspects, can come out. And those are the people I'd never want to leave my life,
Well, I think a lot of people do activate those darker parts of us, but when we're not in conscious relationship, we get lost in the blame game, and we start pointing fingers and getting mean, and the beauty of being someone devoted to one's own healing and one's own coherence, and then holding a standard and being discerning with who it is that we have in our circle, then it's so fun and so sacred.
And I think that is part of, for me at least, the journey of becoming more refined within my sense of self. I stopped looking for validation in so many mirrors. So my circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller, purely because when I have lost my way and I've tapped into that fire and I just want to destroy, and I'm like, whoa, to be surrounded by those that can see when I can't see, and can hold up that the strength of that mirror, and to guide me home, and to trust that, because they've been able to do that for themselves. And that is a certain caliber of human, and that's not most people. So I would rather have, if I was to say the seat of the table of my inner circle, 5 people max. Those are well vetted, self-aware, fully responsible, loving, genuinely want the best for me, as opposed to what they can extract from me, people that won't get lost in the distortion of when those emotions come up, that then you're the fault, you're the problem. Because then that's when it gets really distorted, and friendships break, relationships end, because we can't get over the fact that it's not that person that's causing that thing. And this is nuance and there's many different layers to it. However, for me personally, having someone so close, so intricately woven, my maid of honor, standing there at the aisle with me when I choose to embark on the deepest level of devotion of my life in holy matrimony, to stand there because she earned that place through the fire. We forged through the fire of this friendship. And that is the beautiful thing about conscious relationships, is that you can evolve through them. And a lot of our wounding are relational. You know, just me, my single, I'm home alone, I'm making my morning tea, I've done my yoga. Like, I'm so evolved, yo. Like, look at me go. Wait until somebody's holding up a solid mirror so that you waking up first thing in the morning and they're right there. When you're triggered, they're right there. When you're taking a shit, they're right there. You know, like you're with that mirror and you realize in that conscious relating that there is an opportunity for evolution of consciousness. And that's the gift of this friendship, because when we can actually move through the tension points of where our edges bump into and stay curious, that also on the flip side of the coin is that we are each other's greatest gift. She teaches me how to create legacy project, to stick around long enough and to not constantly feed my sad rising where I'm on to the next high and the next excitement and the next adventure and the next moment of yay, but to actually stick long enough for 3 years to create a legacy project long after the momentum and the excitement of us starting the project has passed. To be in integrity with the long game, the emperor, to create something that is a legacy. And my invitation with the gift of my energy is for her not to get lost in just creating and studying and learning and being in her studio and making 10 years of work and never sharing it with the world. And I bring it out and we go on adventures and we travel the world and we go to Egypt and we go to Peru and we allowed her wings to spread. Now we're sitting on this podcast talking about our creation. And so the gift that we've offered each other is she's allowed me to be the person that can create a legacy project so that when my grandchildren are pulling cards and I'm dead, they can still speak to me. And she can now stand as the teacher in the Gene Key. She's a teacher that she really is, and stand behind her creations that can change the collective consciousness with the depth and the richness and the beauty and the presence that she offers everything that she does. And so once we can move over our own ego, we hit jackpot. And we now have this thing that is literally our heart and our soul inside of a box, while at the same time differentiating in that it's not us. It moved through us, but it's not us. It's its own thing now. But we got to do that through sisterhood.
Blue, would you like to pick a card?
Huh?
You want to pick a card?
Yeah. You gave it a good shuffle.
I did give it a good shuffle.
It's already shuffled. It's
You put the little thing back on it.
I did. I think that's why these technologies like astrology and the tarot, they're here in service of bringing us back into wholeness. And even if you think of a birth chart, you know, the map of the cosmos where they were at the time of our birth, it reveals the path of our high self. It reveals the highest expression of what our being and our life can look like. And it also reveals the shadow and the things that are along the way, the perfectly designed obstacle courses that stand in the way of us accessing that high version of ourselves, and how helpful to have these maps that outline the path to arrive at these more full and perfect versions of ourselves.
Yeah, it's bang on again, based off of what I was just talking about, which is the 9 of Cups.
Oh, nice.
Alignment with the higher self, overflowing blessings and contentment. And the cups is water. All of the suits align with a different element, and each element has a different meaning. Cups is related to the emotions of the heart. And so you have the Ace of Cups, which is the filling up of one's own heart, and then the 2 of Two of Cups moves into then divine love with another and having an equal pour into each other, you know, in being in love, and you pour your heart and your love and your blessings and the beauty of your life, and they pour back, and you're in this like balanced state of beauty. So they go on this journey through the minor arcanas, through the cups. You go from Ace to 2 to 3, and you get to 9 of Cups, which is a tremendous amount of blessings and contentment, because I've cleaned out the dirt of the water inside of my cup so that I can pour it from overflow to every single person that I meet. And this is the gift that can be the byproduct of conscious relating, is that last night, the reason why we are coming here under-resourced with sleep is because we were so excited about receiving what we've actually achieved together. We were so excited we couldn't sleep. And we allowed ourselves to get to that point of the 9 of Cups, of being like, we've reflected each other so deeply that the part of ourselves that was holding us back is now available in our lives, and we have something to give to others as a result of that. And we have all these stories to share. We were just besides ourselves to actually land in that moment. And I think that would be the representation of the 9 of Cups.
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the elements that are associated with each of the suits and the thing that makes the hard cards within those elements difficult. And with the cups, which is water, it's all about stagnancy and resistance and not letting the water flow, and it becomes toxic and sick. And so in this conversation around trusting the triggers and getting curious about them, or getting curious about our wounding, it's allowing ourselves to feel our feelings and to trust in the intelligence of our feelings, and that they, you know, water is very associated with spirit in astrology and in these systems, and it's the intelligence of spirit works through our emotions and what it is that we feel, because through listening to what it is that we feel, we receive lessons, and we unlock parts of our heart to be able to feel and express more fully. And the astrology of the 9 of Cups is Jupiter, blessings, expansion in Pisces, spirit. So through going into the world of our feelings and trusting them as sacred messengers, we activate that energy.
And I'm feeling into, as we're beginning to weave to the end of the conversation, I'd love to pick a card, my first card.
Please.
Or I let you unbox it yourself then.
Wow.
And so I think it's important to mention that this deck is 100% human made. There is no AI in the creation of this deck. Every single card is a card that could have taken us 4 to 10 days to complete. In addition to that, we almost took a full day just mapping out the concept of the card. And then we would also spend weeks studying the energetics behind it. And then not to mention our also lived initiation and lived experience of going through the energy ourselves. And so when you said that you were holding it and you could feel like a heat coming through maybe you pulled half the deck. Maybe that was your message.
Well, I see the Wheel of Fortune on the other side of that. You pulled the big one.
Mm-hmm.
That's the cover of our book.
Wow.
That's my favorite card of the deck. It's my personal one. It's also the front cover of the whole deck.
The Wheel of Fortune. And if we were to relate that to this collective initiation that humanity is going through, what does the Wheel of Fortune represent?
Is to represent that the only constant thing in life is change. This moment will never exist ever again. Never. And the next moment will never exist ever again. Never. It's never been done before, never will be done again. No better excuse than to meet the present moment and to actually be here, because before we know it, this podcast will be over. We'll be back out in our worlds, and you're going to go back out and travel. And I'll be in New York and doing the thing. Life is constantly changing. And the Wheel of Fortune, the drawing that we have is a woman. She's standing in her like very humble rags, her clothes. She's barefoot. She's standing in front of this mystical, multidimensional whimsical, grounded, yet ethereal wheel that is always moving and changing. And that is life. And yet the invitation with life is not to cling to a certain part of the wheel. A lot of us are like, well, as long as you're happy, as long as you find happiness. Well, happiness is as fleeting as sadness. Happiness is as fleeting as creativity. Happiness is an emotion in the wheel of fortune. But the center of the wheel, the goal that we get to walk through, is to be at peace with life's inherent uncertainty, to trust the current, to have 35 years of hearing and to go get deaf overnight, and to wake up the next day and not be able to hear my own voice and being like, oh, the wheel just changed. And now I'm being invited to really walk the walk of what I've been talking about, which is, can I trust that this is happening as an evolution of my consciousness and an invitation for me to root even deeper in my trust? And to stand in the face of the wheel of fortune as it changes, and for it to change in a direction you never saw your life going in, and to continue to find the center of the wheel, which is to be at peace with life's inherent uncertainty. That is my goal. Not happiness, not money, not a relationship, is to trust the current of life. And so in relation to what you said about how this is on a collective level, the wheel is changing. What we have done up until this point is not working, not for anybody. Not for minority groups, not for the life in the oceans, not for the creatures, not for the cosmos, not for our health, not for our nervous system. It's not working. The systems that are placed are rotten at the foundation and does not honor all of life. And so the Wheel of Fortune is asking us to trust the process, even if it's really not how you saw your life going. Because 100% of the time it has worked out up until this point. That's a crazy statistic. So it's just the mind. And when it gets so busy, it's because we're so much information. We're not supposed to receive this much information on a daily basis. So the Wheel of Fortune asks us to get quiet and still and start our day in silence, to align our intentions, to take a deep breath, to create a sense of coherence, and to trust in life's inherent uncertainty. So we stand in front of the wheel, humble to life's unpredictable nature. And this sentence that you are the creator of your life is only half true. I didn't create how this podcast goes. I'm not like, all right, God, now Emilio's going to ask this question. I don't know what's going to happen. I didn't create the person that cut us off in traffic and gave us the birdie. And that didn't happen, but I'm just an example. I didn't create that. So saying to me, you are the creator of your reality, it's only half true. You are in co-creation with something completely unpredictable, and that is the wheel. Mm. And so the responsibility we have is how we respond. That's why the word responsibility, the ability to respond to life's inherent uncertainty. If I go to the doctor and get a diagnosis, did I create that? Or is there a part of my body that is out of coherence with the sense of the whole, and it's an invitation for me to actually go and listen to that diagnosis of why my body is speaking to me, so that I can respond, my ability to respond, my responsibility, from curiosity and therefore true coherence, which equals healing. But we are in a wild dimension that we've all got placed in, and that wheel is always moving. That's always moving. You can guarantee, and I can't guarantee much, that life will never be still. Mm-hmm. And so how do we learn how to show up to the wheel? Humble, barefoot, bowing, and with reverence and respect, as the goal is to be at peace with the unpredictable nature of life.
Mm-hmm. Just to say there real quick, regarding the wheel and the minuteness of what I know of astrology and the great year, the great cycles, is we're also entering into this new wheel, this new cycle of the age of Aquarius. And so asking there with Lily, with a whole new backdrop of energies that will accompany us for the next 2,400 years, what should we know in order to be prepared to receive those energies, even though they'll be unpredictable, even though we can't know exactly what's coming. How can we be in alignment to that energy of Aquarius and everything that we will see for this next cycle of humanity?
Well, Aquarius is associated with technology, and it's also associated with the higher mind. And on the technology front, it's remarkable what is happening with AI and the advancements in the way that culture and life is changing rapidly. It's, the onset of AI is like the invention of electricity. It's the nothing we're doing right now would be possible without that. And so that foundational way that we live and what it is that we're able to do is in rapid change with the onset of AI right now. The shadow of that, of course, is going to be our dependence on technology. And I'm not a very tech savvy person myself, and I can even feel my brain changing and myself becoming more dependent on a quick ChatGPT research for why my dog wasn't feeling well last night. It's just these little things that I lean on. It's changing the rhythm of my life. And it takes us out of the present. And so much of what we've been talking about today has been the sacredness and the intelligence woven into the physical reality of this moment. And it's never been more important to keep ourselves in check with our relationship to technology and to allow our minds the space to actually disconnect and turn off. It's a very different frequency when I've been on my computer all day and I've been on social media all day and I roll right into bed. I can feel my mind just activated. Whereas if I give myself a window of time, a few hours to read and put the red light on or spend some time in nature, even better, I can feel my mind and my nervous system just calibrating to a different frequency that is just more rooted and grounded and real in here. And I'm excited about these advancements with technology and what they're going to allow us to create. And it's a slippery slope. And we have got to be devoted to our grounding practices and to what is real. And even we had no idea that this AI thing was going to take off over the last 3 years while we've been working on this deck. And so many people along the way have asked us why we're not just generating these images with AI, because it would have gone by much quicker. And, AI can create beautiful artwork, and it can be wise even when it's writing and reflecting on concepts. But thank God that's not a path that has ever resonated with me. And and Blu and I have both just intuitively always known that the finished product of what it is that we're working on, yes, it's important and it's beautiful, but it's a representation of a internal process that we need to go on. And it's the journey that's going to infuse meaning into these cards. And it's those types of choices that are crucial to how we engage with this next wave of evolution. And in February, there was a conjunction of Neptune and Saturn at 0 degrees of Aries. And so speaking about the wheel, the zodiac is a wheel, and the 0 degrees of Aries is the very beginning of the 360-degree wheel. And Neptune is the planet of spirit and transcendence, and it dissolves boundaries between this dimension and the next. And Saturn is about structure and form and anchoring spirit into form. And so with these two energies together, I have always felt it as a birthing canal. If you think about the experience of birthing a human child, we begin as this soul in the realm of oneness, and then we're in the womb, and there's a feeling of actual constriction and heaviness, as we separate from oneness and separate from the mother and move through the birth canal and then land in this physical reality as individuals. And the last time this conjunction happened, it was about 6,000 years ago. And we can trace that back to the beginning of language as we know it. And if you think about what language even is, it's a way to put parameters around our inner world and externalize it and communicate. Language is inherently limiting. We need limitation, or else we would just dissolve and float away. And these limits that we have, or these constructs that we've created over the last 6,000 years, have birthed what we call reality. And this is the beginning of a whole new cycle. And I don't know where it's going to go. The Wheel of Fortune, the card you just pulled, is associated with Jupiter. Jupiter doesn't like boundaries. It's going to burst through them and bring us into whatever the next construct is, or whatever the next paradigm is. And, even there's so many pockets that we can see this is happening in, even the conversation around disclosure and the understanding that we aren't a part of only a human civilization, but we have an intergalactic civilization that we are woven into. When that reality is made public to the collective, that will inherently change our concept of reality again. So there's just so many openings, and it's exciting because we're here to evolve and we're here to transcend limitation, and it is also overwhelming. And so it's just our work is to just hold our center and to connect with presence. And it's such a gift that we live on this planet, and to trust in the intelligence of Gaia, and that she is our mother, and to be with her, to listen to her, and we're good.
Mm. We end every show with a segment called the Final Trio, which are just a few questions I personally prepared for both of you.
Fiery trio?
The Final Trio.
The Final Trio.
Last three questions.
The Final Trio. Okay.
Last three questions. The first one I had for both of you was, if you were a superhero.
No, I love this question. I love this question.
And you had one tool that helped you along your superhero journey.
Oh, yeah.
What would it be?
Oh, obviously. It would be my super magic glasses. And my magical glasses, they just look like regular glasses. And they're quite cool, actually. Probably like got some like little cat eyes thing on the side of them. And on the inside, I can see people's soul as opposed to their external appearance. And I can see the truth of who they are on a vibrational level as a result of how much they have devoted themselves to live through their heart or not. And to not get caught in the mire of the illusion of just thinking, just because my eyes see it, it must be true. And these are these magical glasses that I take everywhere, and I just look like reading glasses, and they're really cute. But they pierce right into one's soul. And to see the truth behind the truth, behind the truth, behind the truth. They're my magical glasses.
Give me one of those. What's the affiliate link?
Yeah. Go to the show notes and you get 5% off of your magical glasses. What about you, Wakun?
I can make anything beautiful.
But what's the tool?
The tool, I have a
Your
magic.
hands.
I have a magic wand. Yeah,
What's beauty to you? What do you mean by beautiful?
meaning.
Mm.
There's nothing broken. There's nothing wrong. I can alchemize anything into beauty, meaning that it was intentionally designed to be what one might discard as a mistake. And I obviously, as an artist, I practice that superhero talent in, mistakes that happen in my drawings and my paintings, and they always become the way that spirit is guiding the expression of that piece into something that I couldn't have accessed if I was planning it with my mind. And then with my work, with my devotion to my own healing or my love of astrology, it's all about creating context and meaning for the things that I find impossible to accept, or the things that feel broken about me or the world. And I there's never been a time where I haven't been able to find the golden nugget woven into these impossible circumstances.
It makes me think, her answer makes me think about her mother, who is a sensational interior designer, magic maker. She's also the woman that trademarked the term shabby chic, which is like the design. She is the queen of shabby chic. And what you just shared makes me think of Rachel, because she will go to flea markets and she goes to secondhand places and antique stores, and she finds what seems broken to other people, like kind of beaten up or like scratched on the side. And she's like, I see the beauty in that. And she takes it home and she sands it down and she'll put a fresh lick of paint on it, or she dresses it with a beautiful cloth and puts some lace on the corner and puts some fresh flowers and puts some beautiful color palettes onto it. And all of a sudden it's an exquisite piece of art. But what other people would be like, oh, get that trash out, or that's beaten, or that's broken. And that strength of that creative process is so rich in her matriarchal line that is spanned 3 generations, from Grandma Shirley to Mama Ashwell to Lily. And the gift of going in and seeing something broken and turning it into the most beautiful altarpiece in your home is truly a physical representation of what she's speaking, that is so already intricately woven into you. So get this woman that wand.
And put it in the show notes.
And you can get 5% off your magical wand.
So we'll end with this question. And Blu talks about that humanity stands at a crossroads between a split of synthetic and authentic. What is the choice that determines which path we'll take?
Our everyday mundane action. Our moments when no one's watching. Should I home cook this meal from ingredients that come from the farmer's market of people that have grown this food? Or should I go to McDonald's? Should I buy synthetic fast fashion? Or actually have less is more, but every item that I have is humming at the frequency of authenticity? Should I be honest in this moment, even if it's really uncomfortable, or play into a full sense of harmony for the sake of just not feeling uncomfortable for a moment? Should I be honest online, or should I do it for the algorithms? Every decision on a microcosm level is a decision between authentic and synthetic. Synthetic foods, authentic food. Synthetic truths, authentic truths. Synthetic creations, authentic creation. And as somebody that doesn't hear the world the way that I used to, I hear it differently now. And authentic is a low, warm hug that sounds like and synthetic is dysregulated, no symmetry. Authentic is that warmth you felt while holding that deck of 10,000 pencil strokes for each individual piece of artwork coming from our authentic hands. Synthetic, a tarot deck that was created in 3 weeks just to create another physical object so that we can make more money of something that never even moved through me in the first place. The caption on somebody's post that came from, "Hey ChatGPT, please write me a really spiritually deep, mind-blowing caption on how grace is so important in our lives. Make me sound really profound to the point where people walk away from this experience thinking that I am brilliant." Ding! Within 1 second. But yes, what a great idea. Let me generate you a really fabulous caption so that it really appears that you are as fabulous as you are. Here we go. I've also done it in the cadence of what I appear from our previous conversation, what your voice sounds like. Copy, paste, take out the M dashes so it doesn't look like it came from ChatGPT, post it in your Instagram feed, and Bub's your uncle, now you're a spiritual teacher. Anybody that has trained their ears, not just to listen like the aliens, they don't even have ears. And if they do, they're tiny little holes. Tiny little holes on the side of their head. They ain't got no lobes. What are lobes for? We're not communicating with words. We're communicating with telepathy. Hello, the future human that has learned to feel into the resonance, coherence, as opposed to the synthetic truths. We are inundated with synthetic noise. There have never been more people on this planet with tinnitus. That constant ringing, that high-pitched squeals while you're trying to go to sleep and all you can hear in your ears is... And how can I actually become the student of this tinnitus that is teaching me where I have become saturated in synthetic noise, where I'm scrolling on Instagram before I fall asleep and the last thing I see is blue light piercing into my retina that is infused into my brain, and no wonder why my brain is so noisy. Every tiny choice holds within it synthetic or authentic. And sometimes to be authentic is very uncomfortable. It takes a lot longer to create. It can feel like we're making sacrifices in our relationships. But those people that sit at your table, they were forged in honest conversation, authentic conversation. And so every micro decision is a choice. And that's our responsibility. And we get to be a stand right now and realize that just passively moving through life isn't enough to make conscious decisions, to create an authentic way of operating. And just a final note on that is like we walk into the studio, immediately I can feel the authenticity of the two. So whether I have the glasses or not, I already have it because I don't hear. So I'm listening. And just the eye contact, the warmth, it's the attention and the love that you give to the dogs when they come into the space, and the licks and the sweet moments and your presence and your stillness, and the way that you take a breath before you podcast, the way that you really tune in and you take a scan of your environment and you bring your energy back into your body and you allow that first domino that you push with the first sentence that you say and the first question that you have created from the deep study that you have spent behind the scenes to be able to know who your guests are. This is why people love you as a podcast host. This is why if you just stay consistent, you will go every place that you want to go. Because you show up in the authenticity of your channel and then you bring that out of us and then people can feel it and they receive that, meet a deeper level of their authenticity and pass it on.
Wow. Thank you too. This has been a journey, and ever since I met Blu and then Lily by association in her field, I was just like, this is the type of human that I want to be surrounded with. And then that intention has rippled out into the partner I have today, the people I surround myself, and the, let's say, authentic lifestyle that I choose to live. Even though sometimes I do falter into the synthetic, and forgiving myself in that as well, and knowing that we are toddlers at this time, learning to choose and learning to discern, and ultimately going into this next phase of humanity, as Blu was saying, learning how to hear. And that's what I want more of in my life. So thank you both for creating this, not only just creating it, but taking the personal initiation and attention into this whole process that you've, as you said, the 10,000 strokes per card. That is something that we probably won't see a lot more of in our day and age. And so we know that this was 100% human generated, which I feel like now we'll have to put a stamp. Regina Meredith is starting to do that in her interviews. Like, this is 100% human generated. And I think that's where we're headed, where we don't even have to see the sign, but we already know. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to thank you both for doing this. And I can't wait for more people to hold this creation and have it in their house and have it in their hands, feel the burn that I was feeling. So thank you. Thank you for doing this.